If you want financial freedom, time freedom, and want to leave a legacy for generations to come, you probably have heard real estate investing is the place to do that. How do you get started? What do you have to do? When's the right time? If you are looking for those answers, you've come to the right place. My name is Kyle Stanley, and this is Fearless Flipping. My mission is to help you learn this business and conquer real estate investing. Welcome into another episode of Fearless Flipping. You're checking this out with me, Kyle Stanley, and I'm excited to introduce you today to Michael Butler here in Fresno, California. Michael actually started his investing company and wholesaling right around the same time as me, within literally just a couple weeks of each other. And to see this guy's progress was inspiring for me, and I know it's going to be inspiring for you as well. We actually did this interview back in May, and Michael was knocking on doors for 4 straight months, cold calling. He was doing everything that you could think of that was low budget and, really utilizing his time. This guy is a full-time teacher, full-time coach. He was doing this between the hours of 7 to 9 p.m. at night. And then when the summer hit, going even harder. But the crazy thing is that this is just proof that if you stick with this business and you stick to the fundamentals, you can find deals. Because after 4 months of knocking on doors, and just about anyone probably would have given up after 1 month, he landed his first deal, made $20,000, and he, at the time of this interview, had just gotten his second one under contract. He's done even more deals since then. We're now in September of 2019. And this guy is on fire. He's becoming known very quickly as one of the go-to wholesalers in Fresno. And I am excited for you to hear his story straight from his mouth and to gain so much knowledge from Michael Butler. Here we go. I just want to, first of all, before we jump into your deals and everything that's going on, I got to ask you, what is the most interesting real estate experience that you've had so far in your young career?
Yeah, like you said, it's a young career, so not a lot of moments. I actually had from my first deal. There was actually right across the street. Obviously when you canvass when you're at certain appointments and stuff like that, you canvass the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And there was actually a house that the grass, all the things they tell you to look for, right, for distressed properties. The grass was high. You couldn't see the front door because it had like bushes all around it, and you were like, nobody lives here. This is like ghost. It's like a ghost house. No one lives there. No way, no one can live there. So. I was with my buddy Darren, and I said, I'm about to go knock on the door, which is a fear of mine. I don't like knocking on doors.
Okay.
Because, when you're young in it, it's a lot of things that you're just uncomfortable with.
Sure.
So I knocked on the door. A lady opened the door, and, I started talking to her about the house. And here's actually one of the biggest, not rejections, but one of the biggest things that they've told me so far that I can't, seem to find my way around it is like, when it's an older person, they're like, well, where am I supposed to go?
Right.
And I stumble. I'm like, I don't know. You got a paid off house. Like I don't know where you're supposed to go. Where have you ever wanted to go?
Call up the in-laws,
right? You have any children that would love to have you close by, right? And so I'm looking at the house, and like I said, it hadn't been taken care of. She opens the door, and I literally see it's probably like 2 inches thick of just trash on the floor. Mm. So, you talk about a hoarder house, right? It was filthy. Wow. I didn't know how anyone could live there. I had a good conversation with her, built some rapport with her, and she said, her kids have been wanting her to come live with them. And if, whenever they decided to do that, that's what they would do. So, it wasn't one of those things where I got a deal out of it.
Right.
But it was really just facing a fear, talking to someone, putting something in the pipeline. Maybe it'll come back to me, maybe it won't. But just I was able to really see the how distressed the property was, and be able to understand at some point she's not going to be able to live there that long.
Wow. And in the beginning, those small victories that you can celebrate for sure. So great job on getting outside your comfort zone for sure. Why did you get into real estate? And we just heard that what you're doing now is you're teaching too. So why did you get into real estate? Let's start there.
Let's see. So we were on Christmas break. As teachers, we get, Fresno Unified, we get 3 weeks off. So I'm sitting in bed watching YouTube videos, and I was watching Breakfast Club, and a man by Mark Whitten had got on there, and he started talking about minorities and how we live a life cycle where we spend our life, we accrue debt by going to school trying to change your life, but then you spend the rest of your life paying off debt, and so you never really get a foot up. And then your kids, that they inherit nothing, and so it's the same cycle. And he mentioned real estate and how just a lot of people have been able to build wealth through real estate. And one of the biggest misconceptions with real estate is that you had to have money initially. And then he dropped the term wholesaling. And then from that point, man, it was,
Yeah.
I typed it in YouTube and I found Max Maxwell. And from that point, I mean, I went to the beginning of his YouTube videos or his channel, and I probably watched every video on his channel. Became something that was highly addictive. Something that it blew my mind because it's not something that that you hear all the time. It's almost like, I don't want to say like a kept secret, but
It is, though.
I'm learning about it. And I'm just like, man, how come a lot of my friends don't talk about this, or how come I haven't heard anyone even, you hear people flipping houses, you hear about people having rentals, but you don't hear a lot of their acquisition strategies that they use to acquire this. You always just assume, well, a house is expensive, so real estate is expensive. And so once I started learning that, as a teacher, I'm just like, man, like I could do this on the side, and be able to build, not build, but be able to start to acquire and also be able to, get some deals.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to give you the floor here in a second because your story, I think, is going to speak to so many people today that it's all about grit. It's all about not taking no for an answer, but at the same time, not letting it get you down.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that you just mentioned there is the lack of education, not only just about wholesaling, which is what your niche is right now, but essentially the entire real estate investing process. I don't know about you, but when I tell someone I'm a real estate investor, the number one question I get is, "Oh, when did you get your license?"
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you don't have to have a license to do this.
not at all.
Like, this is the best kept secret in investments. And so, floor is yours. Just walk us through this journey, the highs and the lows and the victories. I'll ask you some backup questions to these deals that you've done, but I just want to hear that story. I want everyone to hear that story.
Okay, so like I said, it started, Christmas break. I discovered, what the term basically. And then from that point, I make a joke about it. Like my wife probably feels like, I neglected her, because when you find out about something that you've never heard of, it's like I said, it's addictive. Why, how are people doing this? Why are they doing it? How, what's the difference between a realtor and an investor?
You're hungry to learn.
You're hungry to learn. And so, they have a term, paralysis by analysis. And so I could say I was paralyzed for probably about, at least 3 to 4 weeks, maybe even a month, and I downloaded Bigger Pockets podcast, Wholesaling Inc., Max Maxwell's, Wholesaling Houses Elite. Joined his Facebook page. There's like 84,000 members on it, and everything that I consumed was real estate investing and wholesale. And so from that, I said January 1st that I was going to start going because I didn't want to get paralysis by analysis. I wanted to get out there and just fail forward, and started driving for dollars because that was the one thing that I can afford. And yeah, income was running low. Income was low, and it's something that I believe in. And, my wife is my biggest support system, and, but when money's not coming in, so there's tension there.
Well, I would assume too, with you not even, because you're doing this after school, she's probably seen you last too.
Yeah, yeah. So when I finished coaching football in November-ish, then I fall into this. So not only have I been gone essentially every day for 6 months, with football, because I coach varsity football. So the hours with that, and just the dedication for that. I also coach softball and baseball at the junior high. So you talk about, I will work all day, go to practice. In junior high, we do it for about an hour and a half. So I'll do that for, from 3 to 4:30, 5 o'clock, go back to my classroom, open up my screen, and just start hammering out phone calls about 7 o'clock. Get home about 7:30, and we got 2 kids. So it's one of those, it takes sacrifice, but it was something that I believed in. I seen too many people be successful doing it. And I just told myself, what, it's going to cause some tension in my marriage, and, my kids aren't going to be able to see me as much as they would like and I would like, but it's ultimately for my family. And I knew if I put in the time and I really just, dedicated myself to something, eventually, it'd be fruitful. And took me 4 months for it to become fruitful. But, I joked about it, and I continued. One of my struggles was, how do you convince somebody that something is real, when you're still trying to convince yourself? I brought it up at some of our real estate meetups that we've had. I mentioned it to Jason. It was one of the questions I asked, like, how do you
Have faith.
have faith? How do you stay motivated? How do you, keep your marriage in a sense, still thriving when working towards something that hasn't been fruitful? And the biggest thing was just being consistent and just having faith that it's going to happen, man. And I did. And
Hey, Fearless Flipping community, let's hear from one of our sponsors right now. Have you thought about becoming a real estate investor, but you have no money, or maybe you just don't feel like you have the right guidance, the right system, or maybe the right plan? Well, the Phenom Investor Blueprint course is your answer. Developed by seven-figure earner Matt Garabedian and a good friend of mine, Matt uses his 10-plus years of real estate investing knowledge to teach you how to get involved with real estate investing without spending a dime. Matt's wholesaling techniques will work for any market at any time. So if you want to make 6 figures, 7 figures, or more, yeah, that's right, it's possible. It's time to invest in yourself. Check out the Phenom Investor Blueprint at fearlessflipping.com/phenom. Again, that's fearlessflipping.com/phenom. This is your first step to financial freedom. fearlessflipping.com/phenom.
it happened.
So before we talk about that first deal, because it's amazing to see what you've been able to accomplish now, getting some momentum going. Before we get to that, that first check comes in. What was your wife's reaction?
For the first time, she wasn't saying nothing.
Really?
It
still wasn't convinced.
No,
huh?
she was convinced,
Okay.
But she wasn't. It was one of those where like, wow, same thing like I felt. It's like it's real. So it makes it a lot easier when I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go lock myself in this room and I'm gonna make some phone calls for a couple hours. It's like, well, if you're gonna keep producing checks like that, then go make those phone calls. You know,
that's awesome. Yeah, because that would be what I would think would happen as soon as that first check comes in. It's like, okay, sigh of relief. Let's go on and get the next one. And so is your goal eventually? It sounds like with teaching and coaching and everything that it is a lot on your plate. Do you want to keep that on your plate? Do you see this being still part-time? Where are you going with it?
I love coaching. Obviously I do plan on eventually getting out of the classroom. It's something that's still so new to me. It's a hobby, but it generates so much. How long can you keep it a hobby?
Yeah.
When you start making more and essentially doing this than you do, say, your regular 9-to-5 job, or it's something. My wife she's in school right now. She's finishing up her degree. She's a business major. And so ultimately I do want to scale it. I'm trying to learn as much as I can and experience as much as I can, so then I can eventually pass that on and let my wife kind of manage it. I still want to be a part of it. But like I said, I went to school to be a cop, and so that's something that I've always wanted to do. And this is going to allow me the option to do something that I've always wanted to do, but not be dependent on the income of it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm going to be able to do both, man.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you and your wife have got a little bit of an idea of being a team together in this eventually too, yeah?
Of course. I mean, just like a marriage, man. In a marriage, you got to be a team. And, it took me putting in the work to really show her what's possible, because it's something that I fell upon, not necessarily her, and so her being able to see the process of it and see the excitement that I get, when a lead comes in, or you get to schedule an appointment, or you get to go to escrow and pick up a check. Those are things that's going to eventually, that pulls her along. And I think once she sees how important it is to me, it becomes important to your partner, or it should be.
Awesome. So you talked about it took 4 months to pay off.
Jeez.
What happened at the 4-month mark? Talk about that first deal.
Okay, so my first deal was a duplex. Crazy. Because you chase single families.
Yeah.
And so it was a duplex. It was a guy that it was a property that I found driving for dollars in January. I reached out to him, and the guy was just like, no, I'm not interested in selling. I want $220 for it. And I'm like, at that time I'm like, okay, well, let me call you back. I got a number, right?
Yeah.
Let me call you back. Let me look at run some of the comps in the area, and I found out that after it's rehabbed, you get about 200, 205 for it. So I called him back and told him, I couldn't do it. It was too high. But I told him if he ever changed his mind, to give me a call back. And that's something that you always want to do, because you just don't know when those things are going to come back. February, he contacted me again and was like, hey, would you do 175? And so that's a massive drop.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that's still high.
Still
I need about $35,000 for a rehab. And I'm like, so I was excited because I'm like, man, he's coming down on his price. Maybe I can get him lower. But, he was like, you know what? I have my primary residence that I'm currently renovating. So this isn't really number one priority for me. And I always tell people, like, I'm not in the business to convince you to sell your house. I'm in the business to help you find the right move for you. My job isn't to convince you, because if I have to convince you, there's really no motivation there.
Sure.
And so didn't sell then. And then in March, towards the end of March, he contacted me and said, okay, I'm ready to sell it at 135.
Wow.
So at this point, I'm on the couch and, I still haven't had a deal. So I'm hop up. I'm like, whoa, he's closer to the number that I want, So I'm like, let me set this appointment. I was going to schedule it for Monday, and we have a big time investor here, Alan Folio. And he told me that he was going to, my seller, he told me that he was going to meet with one of Alan's employees, Kobe, on Sunday. And so I'm thinking, well, if he meets with Alan, this deal's going to be gone. And so I knew that I had a buyer at 135. So I knew I had to lock it up about 130, so I could, make about $5,000 off of it. So I went to the appointment on Saturday, did a walkthrough, looked at it. It was kind of just like, well, towards the end, I'm like, okay, with a window, you start pointing out things that's going to cost money, the high ticket items, your prices, I like where you are, so I like that we're in the same ballpark. Would you be able to do 127? Because I knew I wanted to get him to 130, and I knew he would counter.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
So he goes, well, would you do 129.5? Bingo. I needed him at 130, so I said for sure.
Absolutely.
Walked away, contacted my buyer, wrote an assignment, because when we lock the houses up under a purchase contract, obviously that gives you equitable interest, and then that allows me to assign my interest to an end buyer. And so that's what I did for $135,000. Opened up escrow, and then my buyer, one of my good friends, Darren Wade, he's a realtor for Keller Williams here. Plug.
Didn't even have to be here.
Didn't even have to be here to get the plug. And so then what happened is he actually had he has his own team, Strive Real Estate, that's under the brokerage, Keller Williams. So one of his employees in his little Strive team had a buyer who had a 1031 exchange, and they needed to, use the funds, or so get taxed on it, basically. And so, he offered us 150 for it. So we, here we go assigning it out. Here I go assigning it to Darren for 135, and then he has a guy just out of nowhere. And that's what's great about real estate, man, is because it's all about who you know and who you've touched bases with, and everyone knowing what you do. So it was a guy out of left field coming up, hey, I'll give you 135 for it. I got to spend this money, and we're looking at each other like, well, you might as well. So we were able to assign it for $20,000, and we split it, 10 and 10.
Wow. That's amazing. So I want to go over that really quick again, because there's so much I think that can be learned from what you just shared there. But the first green light was you got the number.
Yeah.
That was like you said, you got that feeling like, oh man, I got a number. A lot of people though, I think, would have given up at that point when you said, hey, I can't do it. It's just too high of a number. I don't think a lot of people would have said, hey, but here's my number. Can I follow up with you? Or, please give me a call if something changes. I think they would have just put it in the trash. So the lesson there, follow up. It's follow up. Absolutely.
They say the money's in the follow up.
Yep.
And that's a perfect example. That first deal was one that, like you said, I could have just left it alone. I got to know, pouted about it. But real estate, man, you got to be persistent. You got to be persistent and consistent.
And that follow-up led to a $20,000 profit. 100%. Yeah, you split it with Darren, but shoot, $10,000.
It made up for the 4 months that I was dry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Put a smile on your wife's face.
Yeah.
But here's the one I want to stay on really quick. Here's negotiation. Because if I'm sitting here and I'm listening or watching this on YouTube, And I'm thinking, man, I don't have any sales experience. I don't have any negotiation experience.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of speak to maybe that fear? Was that something that was a fear for you?
No.
Okay.
Because when you speak with these sellers, the biggest thing, like I said, I can't convince you to sell your home. Mm-hmm. And I'm also not here. You can't think of it as a sales pitch. It's not a sales pitch. We're in this. Obviously, I'm in this to make some type of money. I'm offering you convenience, my time and convenience, or else you could go list it, and get the biggest bang for your buck. And I tell them that. I give them that option. I'm here to help you in the situation that you're in, find the best exit for that. And if that's, dealing with me, I'm more than happy to help you. So, you once they give you their price, and you do your research, you find out what's the most that you can pay for something. And you just be completely transparent about that. You let them know, like, this is what I need in order for it to be a deal. I understand that it is worth this, and if that's what you want, I know realtors I know some great realtors in town. I can refer you to them. You don't ever want to seem like I need your deal. Even though at that time I did need a deal. But I think that's the biggest thing with this is when you're genuine and you treat people, you help them solve their problems. You just happen to benefit sometimes out of it.
Boom. So I think the mindset shift there, the perspective switch is not necessarily negotiation and sales. It's letting them know, hey, I'm not trying to convince you. Mm-hmm. And it's having that helpful mindset and being completely transparent. And if you do all those things, at that point, you're really not negotiating. You're just helping them.
Yeah, you're helping them because the biggest thing is when you're speaking with them, you want to find out, we call it a pain point. You want to find out why are they even considering to sell. If they're just thinking about selling because they want to make the money out of it, well, yeah, go list it. This guy happened to I think get married recently, and he's pulled money out of his retirement, and he needed to replace that money. So so from that point, I'm like, boom, okay, he pulled money out. I need to find out what he spent on that, right? Absolutely. Because at that point, he's thinking about selling to recoup the money that he spent. So that may be a number that I target. If I found out it was $30,000 that he spent on this wedding, well, it's like, okay, well, I can give you $30,000 for it.
Yeah,
maybe $35,000 for it.
I think you just hit it on the head. And I think that's probably the toughest part about this business is finding that motivated seller. Mm-hmm. You find the motivated seller, you can do a lot with them.
Yeah,
it's the same thing if you sell water. And you say you go to Whole Foods or something and you try to sell that water, there's not a sense of urgency. But you go to the end of a marathon finish line and try to sell that water. Well, now you're in front of the audience. You got the motivated person in front of you.
Yeah, and so a lot of people would say, oh, well, it's a scam or you're ripping people off. Well, people feel that way because they think it's all about money. Mm-hmm. And people sell their homes. It's not always about money. They have a problem, and if you can solve a problem for them. They'll take care of you.
Absolutely.
Like you said with the water. I've been to a nightclub where I've spent $11 on a Red Bull. That's $2 at a liquor store. But I wanted a Red Bull, so they got me. Exactly. They solved my problem at that time. It cost me more, but it was convenient for me.
Absolutely. I like that one too. All right, so let's talk about the second deal. You're in escrow right now. It sounds like you're going to make another $10,000 is what you're guessing. How did this one come about?
This one was a Facebook ad. This was one. I had the daughter of a seller reach out to me. Her father currently lives with her and her husband. Parents moved out of the house. I guess mom, I believe got sick or something occurred with the family. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I just know the parents moved out of their primary residence into the daughter's home to help her with her children because I think her and her husband worked a lot. And so it just worked at that moment. Mom passed away throughout that process, and dad pretty much never wanted to go back to that home again. So that was a pain point for him. He didn't want to be there. I found out that there was a relative living in it the last 3 years. And if you let these sellers talk, they'll air it all out there. And that's the biggest thing. You got to know the questions to ask to get some of this stuff out. And so as it came out, there was a relative living in the home who hadn't paid for the 3 years that they lived there. Well, pain point, you're not making no money, and the house isn't, there's still a mortgage on the house, so you're paying for a house that you're not even staying in.
Yeah. Sympathizing with their situation,
with their situation, yeah. You got to understand that. I mean, I'd feel the same way. I need to get some money out of this house.
Yeah. How much did that Facebook ad cost you?
It was free, man.
It was free?
Free. It cost me some time that I never get back.
Okay. How'd you get a free Facebook ad? I got to pay for
not
mine.
Not an ad.
Okay.
I use the Facebook Market. I use the marketplace. I use the little groups.
Wow.
The buy, sell, trade groups.
Wow.
Because think about it. There's even one that I debated back and forth whether I was going to post it into it was like a car group, and I was like, I'm talking about houses.
Yeah.
But I'm like, think about it. If someone is possibly selling a car, probably looking for some money, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm just I'm casting my will into the dark, but
it's free.
All I need is one person to contact me out of there.
That's so awesome, because I think one of the big things too is there's so many different ways to advertise in real estate investing that costs a lot of money. Direct mail, whether it's money or time, you're going to spend it somewhere. But with no budget or a low budget, Facebook ads, knocking on doors, making cold calls, these are ways that are either cheap or free that, like what you're doing, if you've got grit, sometimes that's a little bit more valuable than the money you got in the bank.
100%. That's what's going to get you money in your bank.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. So at what point, or has there been the point yet that you're like, hey, I'm doing this. I'm a success?
It's funny because, like I said, one deal closed, one in escrow right now. Dude, I'm still relatively new. But it's funny because you'll have people reach out to you like as if you just done so many deals, but I had to reflect on it and think about it. It took me 4 months to get that deal. When during those 4 months, I would have reached out to someone with one deal, right? Because they've essentially you've gotten over that hump. That initial hump is the toughest. And when you get over that hump, you just got to find a way to duplicate it. But getting over that hump isn't necessarily finding the deal. It's finding the persistence. It's finding the attitude. It's finding just the faith to keep going. So when you see someone who's actually done what you're trying to do, that's something that you're going to reach out to. And so I've had so many people reach out to me just to ask, not what's the secret, but just how'd you do it? What's the story? What did you look at? What did you watch? And I tell them you got to become obsessed with it. And that's with anything. If you're going to be successful with something, you got to be obsessed with it.
I think to your story, let's just compare you to another Michael Zuber. He's got 180 rental properties. But dude, I'm looking at your story and I'm like, man, I can do it. To me, you're more inspirational than what Michael Zuber is, and I love what Michael Zuber is doing. I've interviewed him. I mean, he's amazing. I want to be where he's at.
It's almost overwhelming to see where he's at. Huh?
But that's the thing. He's climbed Mount Everest, and I'm over here trying to climb the anthill. Like I need to climb that anthill before I can even think about Everest, and that's exactly where you're at. So I mean, you're inspiring. I think a lot of people just by sharing the story. So thank you for doing that. And the last question I just want to ask you here is, you hinted at it, but can you dive a little bit deeper into why you're doing this? It sounded like family was a big reason.
Family was a big reason, man. I think like I said, being a teacher, being a coach, I spend a lot of time away from home. And so when you hear of something that's not only going to allow you to spend more time at home, because Max Maxwell even says time is the one thing you can't buy back. And so when you find something that allows you to do that, but also allows you to leave a legacy for your children, why not? And I'm happy, man. I'm happy. I feel like I got a lot of time to talk to like-minded people. This thing's been a breath of fresh air, and I think anyone who's obviously thinking of who doesn't even want to be where they are, maybe we get so content on doing what we do every day, in a sense of going to work, coming home exhausted, trying to find time for your family, and making everything stretch. That's not a healthy lifestyle. Yeah. But we can become content with it. So if you have something in mind that's going to allow you the freedom to be able to enjoy life, I think a little bit more, because we don't get a lot of years here on Earth. And so when you find something that allow you to cash in on your time, I think you chase it, man.
That's amazing. Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Of course, people are going to want to connect with you. 100%. So I want to ask, where are you comfortable with people connecting with you? Okay,
so I have my Instagram. I try to post content on there as much as I can. That's something that's still kind of new to me. I've always had social media, but it's at butler.buys.houses. on Instagram. If you want to shoot me a text message or, give me a call and, you got some questions for me that you maybe don't feel comfortable with putting it on social media, they can call or text me at 559-366-2936.
Okay, so for our listeners, I'm going to repeat that. For our friends on YouTube, you can just go down to the description below. All that information will be there. But on Instagram, it's butler.buys.houses, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then your phone number is 559-366-2936.
Yep.
All right. Any last words for our viewers?
No, man, thank you for having me. And like I said, I don't feel like I've made it anywhere, but you've definitely made me feel that way. So I definitely appreciate it. You've re-energized me a little bit, and I appreciate you, man.
You have. Michael Butler used to have fear. Now he's on the road to being fearless.
Go out there, be like Mike, leverage your time, find ways to figure out your budget. I mean, that's the number one thing, the takeaway that I have for this is that Michael didn't have this huge budget for direct mail, for a lot of bandit signs. He went out there and he just pounded pavement, found low budget ways, whether it was spending money for gas, for driving for dollars, or finding some, cold call lists that were super cheap that he could use his time to go into. That was what worked for him. So find what works for you. Get over that fear of what's going to happen, what might happen, or what if I don't get a deal. It took him 4 months. Like, that is a long time. So anyway, before I get off into another tangent here, the show notes are fearlessflipping.com/Mike Butler. Again, fearlessflipping.com/Mike Butler. Learn from him. Follow him on social media. Butler Buys Homes. This guy is one person that you definitely want to follow the progress of. That's it for Fearless Flipping. Go out there, conquer real estate investing. We will see you next time.